And joining us from Hyderabad is Syed Akbaruddin, India's former permanent representative to the United Nations, someone who has also served as the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, as well as India's representative at the IAEA. Mr. Akbaruddin, welcome to WION.
Thank you very much, Palki.
Let me start with
a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. Let me start with the million-dollar question. Who are you putting your money on, Donald Trump or Joe Biden?
You know, the US election is an election that everybody has a view on. So there are a billion plus, maybe billions of individuals all across the globe who would like to put their money in. So if I do something like that, I'd only be following millions or billions of them. But then that's not a very difficult thing to do in terms of articulating your choice. But what is more important is to see how the process plays itself out. And that is perhaps once in a century election where the processes that all that we've learned for are changing, twists and turns at every instant. So I wouldn't be a betting man, so I wouldn't want to bet. But the whole world is watching and each one can pick his own.
I think diplomats, like journalists, never retire. You've given me a long answer, but you've still not answered my question. In the media, sir, we use the word unprecedented quite liberally. But would you say that this election truly has been unprecedented, given the many variables and the deepening divide in America?
Yes, it's unprecedented in many terms. You know, every leap year, we look at two global events, one the Olympics and the other the US presidential election. The Olympics is already been undermined by the global pandemic, and therefore it is now going to be held next year. The US presidential election has been impacted by the pandemic in multiple ways. You've just mentioned that the number of early voters is a historic high, 95 plus million. This has never happened. I don't know whether the systems are geared up for this sort of upsurge. Also, we are hearing about perhaps a legal outcome very soon. There are judges on the US Supreme Court who have been through this process in 2000 when they were on the Bush judicial team. 3 US Supreme Court judges have had experience there. So in many, many ways, this is an unusual election. So let's sit back and let it unfold rather than put our money and wager.
Right. What do you make of these early voters, 95 million plus? Is it anti-incumbency, as we like to discuss in Indian elections, or is it because of the Wuhan virus and people taking precautions? So
you can choose where you stand will determine what you see. And that means that if you would like to see the election as a referendum, a choice between President Trump's outsized personality and all his impact on the US administration, you can look at it that way. On the other hand, you can look at the election as a competition between two extremely different visions. There are differences on every aspect. Differences on how to tackle the pandemic, differences on how to tackle the economy, how to address matters of taxation, healthcare, climate change, how to work with allies across the Atlantic, how to address social inequality, racism, how to address Supreme Court justices, regulation of social media, multilateralism. So there are a dozen or so big issues where there are clear differences. You could address those, or you could address this as a choice of a referendum of President Trump's 4 years in office.
Well, you saw the transition happen from Obama to Trump. You were in the US and you were there till 2019. You've seen the Trump administration operate at close quarters, closer than many of us here. What do you make of Donald Trump as president? He came as the disruptor. Has he been able to deliver on the promises he came with?
President Trump tries to portray that he has delivered what he had promised. And he has a whole list of issues on which he has delivered to some extent or the other. It is, I must say, a fairly elaborate and impressive list of things that he delivered. But then the US president is not an independent individual. Ultimately, what he says has to be passed through Congress, through legislative action, etc. And there have been many places where there are shortcomings. Obviously, it's for the American people to decide which of these vision or arguments is true. There are yeses, pluses and minuses on each issue. It depends on which issue is important for you and what you think is the basis on which you would vote.
We've done hundreds of stories on the US election here on WION, covering, we believe, every aspect of it. But when we go out, I think the Indian audience mostly has only one question. Has Trump been a friend of America? How would you rate him there? Of India, I'm sorry.
There is no doubt that...
Of India.
Yes. There is no doubt that the trajectory of Indo-US ties during this administration has been on the upswing. But that said, this is not new. If you start from 2000, there has been alternatively a change of administrations. We had in 2000 Bill Clinton relinquish office and President Bush take over from Democrat to Republican, and then back to Democrat in 2008 and back to Republican in 2016. During each of these, our ties have only been enhanced. And that also, while we have had changes on our side. We've had the NDA government in 2000. We then had the UPA government and then back to the NDA government. Despite these changes, Indo-US ties have a secular trajectory of being on the upswing. And that's a reflection of convergence of interest. So if you would like to say, was there a greater convergence of interest during President Trump's administration? The answer is obvious. Yes, there was. It built on President Obama and President Bush. We hope whoever succeeds now would build on that strong edifice of ties.
My final question, the Indian American voters, they seem to have a lot of clout. They have a place in the American society, and they've traditionally been supporters of the Democrats. Do you believe that Donald Trump has been able to sway a section of that vote bank towards his side with his many events that he's had with Prime Minister Modi, and he tries to project himself as a friend of Prime Minister Modi?
So the Indian American diaspora, like India itself, is very diverse. It's pluralistic, and it can be differentiated depending on states, from where you hail, the professions where you work, etc., etc. But that said, today, although they represent only 1% or slightly less than that of the electorate, they are being wooed by both sides. They clearly, in the past, have been supporters of Democrats in general. However, recent polls do indicate that there has been a small but significant move of several of them in percentages terms towards Republican. So obviously, there has been some impact on the Indian diaspora in the US in drawing away from the Democratic Party, although still a significant number, in perhaps a majority, still seem to vote for Democrats on issues relating to the US. And that's how it should be in any case. They are US citizens and they will vote according to interests they see as citizens of the United States. And that's what we would wish them to do so.
Right. I'm going to leave it at that. But by this time tomorrow, I think the final phase of voting will be on in some states. And then the day after, we'll have the results, most likely, if Donald Trump doesn't have his way and send his lawyers in. I look forward to speaking with you on those matters. Mr. Akbaruddin, thank you very much for being with us here on Gravitas.
Thank you very much, Palki.
Thank you for watching Gravitas on WION's YouTube channel. If you want to stay up to date with what's happening around the world, then subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like and share. Thank you very much for watching WION. World is One.